I never thought I would end up like this, the day I hired a poor black woman to cook for me. I thought I was being generous, little did I know. I was about to uncover a truth that would change both of our lives forever. It started when I decided I needed someone to help out around the house. I've always been a busy man, running my billion-dollar company. Constantly traveling, always busy. I didn't have time to cook, to clean, or even take care of my own meals. So I decided to hire a maid, not just any maid, but someone who could also cook. I hired a woman named Linda. She was in her late 40s, always smiling. Though I could tell life hadn't been easy for her, she was thin, worn out in a way that made me feel guilty for asking her to cook for me in the first place. But I didn't think too much of it. I thought of it as a simple exchange. She cooked for me. I paid her a decent wage. That was the deal. The first time I saw her in my kitchen, I didn't think much of it. She wore an apron over a simple dress. Nothing fancy. I stood in the doorway. Watching her prepare dinner, I noticed how methodical she was. Every movement so precise, so calm. "Is everything okay?" I asked, feeling a bit awkward as she chopped vegetables. She looked up at me, smiled, and nodded. "Yes, sir. Just getting dinner ready." There was something in her eyes, though. It wasn't just the routine of a maid, it was something more. But I brushed it off. I had other things to worry about. Weeks passed, and Linda became a fixture in my home. Every evening she'd cook, clean, and leave before nightfall. I never thought to ask her about her life, and she never volunteered anything. It wasn't until one day when I was working late that things began to unravel. I came home earlier than usual, hoping to catch a break. But when I walked into the kitchen, I froze. Linda wasn't cooking, she was crying. She didn't hear me enter at first. She was standing by the stove, wiping her eyes with a towel. I wasn't sure what to do. I'd never seen her this way. I felt a pang of guilt for not noticing sooner. The woman I had hired was always so composed, but now I could see the weight of her life pressing down on her. "Linda," I called softly. She turned to face me, her eyes red. The sight of it caught me off guard. "I'm sorry," she whispered, quickly wiping her face. "Linda, what's going on?" I asked, walking toward her. She shook her head, as if trying to make the tears disappear. "It's nothing, just something personal." I stood there, unsure of what to say. The silence between us felt heavy, but I didn't want to push her still. I couldn't just leave her like this. I sat at the kitchen table, the scent of the dinner she was cooking hanging in the air. Finally, after a long pause, she spoke. "I'm sorry." She started again, her voice cracking. "I didn't mean to bring my problems here, but you wouldn't understand." "Try me," I said quietly, not sure why I felt so compelled to know. Linda hesitated for a moment, then began to tell me a story. It wasn't just the story of a poor woman struggling to make ends meet. It was something far more painful. She told me about how, years ago, she had worked for a wealthy family in the same city I lived in. She had cooked for them, cleaned their house, and cared for their children. She'd been a maid for them for nearly 20 years. But one day, she came home to find her husband gone, disappeared without a trace. That wasn't the worst part. The worst part was when she found out what had happened to him. She told me how her husband had been wrongfully accused of a crime he didn't commit. He was black and the justice system wasn't kind to him. They threw him in prison and no one cared enough to look into the case. Linda had tried everything to get him out, but nothing worked. Eventually, her husband died in prison. She didn't even get to see him one last time. As she told me this, my heart sank. It was hard to believe, especially coming from the woman who had been nothing but kind to me. I had never thought about the lives of the people who worked for me. I just saw them as employees, nothing more. But hearing Linda's story hit me like a punch to the gut. I just wanted to get out of that life, she whispered, her hands shaking as she spoke. But every time I try, it feels like I'm stuck in a cycle. I don't even know who I am anymore. I didn't know how to respond. The guilt of hiring her to serve me, to cook for me. When I had never once considered her struggles, it all came crashing down. "You never told me any of this," I said softly. She shrugged, wiping her eyes again. What was I supposed to say? That I was more than just a maid? That I wasn't just here to cook your meals? People like you don't care about people like me. I couldn't argue with her. It was true. I hadn't cared. Not until now. Over the next few days, I found myself thinking a lot about Linda's story. I couldn't stop wondering how many other people like her were out there. People who were just trying to survive, to make it through another day. While I sat on my wealth, unaware of their struggles, I knew I had to make a change, but I wasn't sure what that meant. Linda's truth had shaken me, and I had no idea how to fix the damage. But there was one thing I knew for certain: I couldn't just go on living the way I had before. I had to do better for Linda, for everyone like her. So I did something I never thought I would do. I offered to help her. I asked if there was anything I could do to get her life back on track. She didn't believe me at first, but I insisted. I helped her get legal support to look into her husband's case. We discovered the flaws in the investigation. I funded the search for answers. After months of hard work, Linda's husband's case was reopened, and justice was finally served. It wasn't easy, and it didn't bring him back. But it gave Linda some peace. She stopped working for me after that. I didn't want her to feel like she had to stay. But we kept in touch. And when she walked out of my life for good, she wasn't the same woman I had hired months ago. She was stronger, freer, and so was I. I'll never forget the day she left. She gave me a hug, the kind that told me she had forgiven me for not seeing her, for not understanding, but I understood now. I understood a lot more than I ever wanted. After Linda left, my world felt strangely empty. It wasn't because I missed her cooking, though that was a part of it, but because I realized how much I had taken for granted, how much I had ignored. Linda had been a mirror, reflecting everything I never wanted to face about myself and the life I lived. I spent months thinking about everything she had opened my eyes to. I started paying attention to the people around me, the ones who served me and others, like the waitstaff at restaurants, the people cleaning offices, the ones fixing roads. I started to see them as people, not just invisible workers in the background. It was a painful process. Acknowledging how much I had turned a blind eye, I didn't just sit with my guilt, though I knew I had to do something, not just feel sorry for myself. I took the money I had set aside for my own luxuries and started donating it to causes that helped people like Linda, people struggling against systemic injustice. I got involved in advocacy for criminal justice reform. I didn't want anyone else to have to live through what Linda had endured, but the more I did, the more I realized just how far-reaching the problem was and how deeply embedded it was in the systems that governed our lives. Linda's husband wasn't the only one who had been wrongfully imprisoned. He wasn't the only one who had been neglected or forgotten by society. There were so many more stories like his, buried under layers of bureaucracy, racism, and indifference. I couldn't fix everything. Of course, I wasn't that naive, but I had learned that change didn't come from simply acknowledging a problem. Change came from the willingness to stand up, to confront uncomfortable truths, and to take action. Linda had given me a glimpse of what true compassion looked like. It wasn't just about handing out charity or paying someone for their labor. It was about seeing them, really seeing them as human beings. I continued to work on the advocacy projects, but I also spent more time reflecting on my own biases. My own upbringing. I was born into privilege, white, rich, with opportunities handed to me that many would never even dream of. I used to think I had earned everything I had. But now I could see how much of my success had been built on the backs of people like Linda, people whose struggles I had never cared to understand. A year passed. Linda never came back to my house. I think she had found her own path, away from me and away from the life she had once known. But I never stopped thinking about her. Then, one day, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Linda. I opened it, unsure of what to expect. In the letter, she thanked me for everything I had done, for helping her get her husband's case reopened, for supporting her, for showing her that there was still hope. But there was more. Linda told me that she had used the money I had helped her with to start a small business, a catering company specializing in Southern cuisine. Just like the meals she had cooked for me, she had wanted to honor her husband's memory and create something that would stand as a testament to her strength, to the life she had fought for. Even when everything seemed impossible, I'm doing well now. The letter read, "Not rich but free, and that's enough for me. I want you to know that you were part of that. You helped me see that I had power, that I could build something for myself. I'm not just the maid anymore." I folded the letter slowly, letting the weight of her words sink in. Linda wasn't just free from her past. She had taken control of her future. She had turned her pain into something beautiful, something that was hers and hers alone. I could see the woman she had become, and I realized just how much of an impact one person can have on another. Whether they know it or not, it took me a long time to write back. I didn't want to overstep, didn't want to intrude, but I felt like I needed to tell her something important. I wanted her to know that I hadn't forgotten about her, that what she had taught me hadn't been lost. When I finally sent my reply, I didn't know if I'd ever hear from her again, but I hoped she knew that even though our lives had gone in different directions, I would always carry the lessons she had taught me, and maybe, just maybe, our brief connection had helped to change both of our lives. Months went by after I sent that letter, and the silence between Linda and me felt both comforting and painful. I hadn't expected her to respond, but there was still a part of me that hoped she would. I had changed a lot in that time, but I still had questions that had lingered ever since she walked out of my life, about how someone like me, with so much, could ever truly understand what someone like her had been through. Then one day I received another letter. This time, it wasn't just a thank you or a polite message, it was something more. She had sent me an invitation to her restaurant's grand opening. I couldn't believe it, Linda. The woman who had once worked in my kitchen as a maid was now running her own business, and she wanted me to be there to see it. I felt a lump in my throat when I read the invitation. It felt surreal, like the end of one chapter and the beginning of another, not just for her, but for me as well. I had been so consumed with my own guilt and my attempts to make things right that I hadn't fully realized how much Linda had grown, how much she had fought to create something better for herself. She didn't need me to fix her life. She was already fixing it herself. I decided to go. The day of the opening was a warm, sunny afternoon. The restaurant was a small, cozy place on the corner of a busy street. Nothing extravagant, but full of character. The smell of southern cooking wafted through the air, and when I stepped inside, it felt like stepping into Linda's heart. The walls were decorated with photographs of her family, her husband, and scenes from her childhood. It was clear she had poured everything into this place, everything she had fought for and everything she had lost. Linda wasn't in the kitchen when I arrived, but she appeared at the front door as soon as she saw me. Her face broke into a smile that was both proud and warm, and for a moment, I saw the woman she had become, the woman I had never truly known until now. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice full of emotion. I stood there, unsure of what to say. "I'm so proud of you, Linda. You've done something incredible," she nodded, looking down at the floor for a moment before meeting my gaze again. "I couldn't have done it without people like you, people who opened their eyes, who gave me a chance, but mostly I did it for me, for my family, for my husband's memory. I'm free now." I didn't have the words to express everything I was feeling in that moment. There were so many emotions: pride, guilt, admiration, and a deep sense of gratitude. But I knew that no words could fully capture the impact she had made on me as we stood there talking. I noticed something. There was no bitterness in Linda's voice, no anger. She had every right to feel that way after everything she had been through, but she didn't. Instead, she radiated strength, quiet, unshakable strength. "I hope this restaurant lasts," she continued, a hint of hope in her voice. "I hope it becomes something more than just a business. I want it to be a place where people like me can come and find support, where they can be seen. I want to make a difference, even if it's just in one person's life." I nodded. "You already have," as the evening wore on. I watched Linda interact with her guests, some regulars, some first-timers, each one treated with respect, warmth, and care. There was something special about the way she moved through the restaurant, a quiet confidence that came from knowing she had built something of her own, something that was hers and not defined by her past or the roles she had been forced into. At one point, she stepped outside for a moment to catch her breath, and I followed her. We stood together on the sidewalk, watching people come and go. "You know," she said, "I never imagined this would be my life, not in a million years. When I was working for those families, I thought that was all I was meant to be, just a maid. I never thought I would be doing something like this." I smiled. Neither did I. But I think we both found something better. She laughed softly. "Yeah, I guess we did. You're not the same man I met that day either." I nodded, feeling the weight of her words. It had taken time, but I had finally learned to see people as they were, not just through the lens of my privilege. I had learned to listen, to understand, and to take responsibility for the ways I had overlooked others as I left that night. I promised myself that I wouldn't forget Linda's journey or my own. I had been given a rare opportunity to witness something beautiful, not just her success, but the redemption of my own soul. Linda had shown me what it meant to truly change, to fight for what you deserve, and to take control of your destiny. And as for Linda, she wasn't just the maid anymore. She was a woman who had built her own empire, one that would last far longer than the life she had once been forced to live, and that was enough to change both of us. The months following Linda's restaurant opening were nothing short of transformative for both of us. I continued to visit her establishment, not as the man who had hired her once, but as someone who truly admired her strength and resilience. Every time I walked through those doors, I felt like I was stepping into something more than just a restaurant. I was entering a place where dreams weren't just nurtured, they were made real. Linda's business started growing faster than anyone, including me, could have imagined. Word spread quickly about the authenticity of her cooking, her story, and the genuine love she poured into her work. She became something of a local hero, a symbol of determination and change. The small catering company she had started had expanded into a bustling restaurant, and soon she was able to employ others who had been through similar struggles, offering them a chance at a new beginning. One day, Linda invited me to sit down with her, away from the hustle and bustle of the restaurant. She wanted to share something with me, something I hadn't expected. "I've been thinking a lot about my future," she began, folding her hands on the table. "I want to take this business to the next level. I want to offer training programs for young people, especially those who've had a hard time finding work because of their pasts. I want them to learn skills, to see that they don't have to be stuck in the same cycle I was in." I could feel the passion in her voice as she spoke. I knew how much this meant to her. She wasn't just about serving food, she was about serving a greater purpose, helping others break free from the same chains that had held her down. "That sounds incredible," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, though a lump had formed in my throat. "You've come so far, Linda. You've built something real, something that can change lives," she smiled. But there was a flicker of concern in her eyes. "It's going to take more than just a good idea. It's going to take resources, connections, and that's where I need your help." I wasn't surprised. I knew Linda wouldn't ask for help unless she truly needed it. But even though it was a big ask, I was more than willing to support her. I had seen what she was capable of, and I believed in her vision. "You have it," I said without hesitation. "Whatever you need, I'll help make it happen." And so we began to plan. I used my connections, my wealth, to secure funding for Linda's training programs. We reached out to local schools, to community organizations, to business leaders who might be able to help. The more people we spoke to, the more I realized how many others wanted to see change too. How many people were ready to support someone like Linda, someone who wasn't just asking for a handout, but for an opportunity to give others a chance. As the months went by, Linda's programs started to take shape. She was able to offer cooking classes, mentorship, and even job placement assistance for young people. What started as a small, humble restaurant had evolved into a community hub, a place where people could find not only great food but a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose. I continued to visit, not just as a supporter, but as a friend, and with each visit, I saw the difference she was making. Linda's heart was as big as ever, but now she had something that she hadn't had before, a sense of peace. She had built something that was bigger than herself, something that would live on long after her. One evening, as I sat at a corner table, enjoying a plate of her famous Southern fried chicken, she came over to check on me. She was busier than ever, but she always took a moment to talk, to check in with me. It had become our little tradition. "How's everything going?" she asked, smiling as she saw me enjoying my meal. "Perfect," I said. "You've truly created something amazing here." "Linda," she nodded, her smile softening. "I didn't do it alone. I had help from people like you. People who believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself." I shook my head, not sure how to respond. "You didn't need me to believe in you. You've always had the strength to do this on your own." Hey there. If this story moved you, don't forget to hit subscribe to join me for more powerful real-life stories that spark change and inspire strength. Together we can explore stories of resilience, justice, and the moments that make a difference. Your support helps amplify voices that need to be heard. So let's grow this community of change makers. Click subscribe now, and let's continue this journey together. She looked at me for a moment, as if weighing her words. Maybe. But sometimes all it takes is one person to see you for who you really are. One person to give you the chance to show what you're capable of. I realized she wasn't just talking about herself. She was talking about all the people who had come through her doors, all the people who had been given a chance, a purpose, something to fight for. She had shown them their worth, the same way she had shown me mine. As I watched her move around the restaurant that night, greeting guests, checking on staff, and running the kitchen with the same passion that had driven her from the beginning, I couldn't help but think back to the day I first hired her. How far we both had come, how much we had learned, The person I was then, so unaware, so blind to the struggles of others, felt like a distant memory. Linda had been the catalyst for my change. But she hadn't just changed my perspective, she had changed an entire community. And I knew she would continue to do so for years to come. As I finished my meal that night, I made a silent promise to myself to never forget the lessons she had taught me, to always seek out ways to be part of the change I wanted to see in the world. Because if there was one thing Linda had shown me, it was that it wasn't enough to simply acknowledge the problem. We had to be the solution, and in that moment, I knew I was on the right path. A few years passed since that night, and I watched Linda's restaurant grow into something even more incredible. What started as a small, locally loved spot had expanded into a chain, each location giving people the same sense of hope and opportunity that the original one had. Linda's vision of giving people a chance to prove themselves, of lifting others up, had become a movement. People from all walks of life, young, old, from different backgrounds, were finding a place to belong through the training programs she had set up. One afternoon she called me. Her voice was calm, but there was something in it that made me pause. "I've been thinking about something," Linda said, her tone a little more serious than usual. "I've reached a point where I'm ready to pass this on. I've done everything I set out to do, and now I think it's time to let the next generation take over." I felt my heart skip a beat. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to process what she was saying. "I mean that I want to make sure everything I've built doesn't just stay with me. I want the programs, the restaurant, the community work to keep going long after I'm not the one running it. I want someone else to take the reins. Someone who believes in what we've created." I was taken aback. Linda had always been the heart and soul of everything she had built. The idea of her stepping back seemed almost impossible, as if the restaurant, the training programs, everything she had created was an extension of who she was. "Linda, are you sure about this?" I asked, my voice unsure. "You've worked so hard this place. These people, they're all part of you, I know," she replied softly. "But sometimes the hardest part is knowing when to let go. I've seen what this can become, and I believe it will keep going. Even without me leading the work we've done, it's not about just one person, it's about the community, the people we've helped, the way we've come together. It's bigger than me. It's bigger than all of us." I didn't know how to respond. I respected Linda more than anyone, and if she truly believed this was the right step, I had to trust her, but I also knew the weight of her decision. Passing on something so important wasn't easy, especially after all she had invested. "You're right," I said finally, "but I have no idea who could take your place." "You're irreplaceable," Linda laughed softly. "I think you're wrong about that. You've seen what I've built. And you've seen what people like us can do when we're given the chance. It's not about finding someone to replace me. It's about finding someone who can continue this work, someone who can see the bigger picture." I sat quietly, thinking about her words. I knew she was right, as much as I had admired Linda. I knew that change was inevitable. It was how things grew, how they evolved. "I'll help you find someone," I said, determined. "We'll make sure this place carries on, even if you're not in charge anymore." "Thank you," she replied, "but you don't have to do it alone. You've always been a part of this, and I want you to be involved in whatever comes next." "I trust you." Her trust in me meant more than I could express. It wasn't just about the financial help I had provided in the past. It was about the belief she had in me, not just as someone who had helped her, but as someone who had transformed because of her. The search for the right person to take over Linda's legacy wasn't easy, but eventually, we found someone, a young woman who had gone through Linda's training programs, who had a passion for the same work, and who had the vision to keep pushing things forward. I saw in her the same determination I had seen in Linda years ago, the same fire that had fueled Linda's journey. It was bittersweet watching Linda step back from the restaurant she had poured so much into. But as she passed the baton, it became clear that she had created something that could live beyond her. The community she had built would continue, and the impact she had made would ripple out for generations. As I sat in the restaurant one last time with Linda before she left to pursue new endeavors, I couldn't help but reflect on how far we had both come. I was no longer the man who hired her out of a sense of obligation or guilt. I had become someone who saw people for who they really were, who understood the depth of their struggles and the beauty in their resilience. "I'll never forget what you've done for me." "Linda," I said, my voice thick with emotion, "you've taught me what it really means to care about people, to fight for what's right." Linda smiled, the same quiet, knowing smile I had seen so many times before. "You don't need to thank me. You were always capable of doing this. You just needed to see it." As she walked away, I watched her go, knowing that the world was a little better, a little kinder, because of her. And I knew that her legacy would continue to change lives, to break cycles, to give people a chance. I left the restaurant that night with a full heart and a sense of peace, knowing that Linda had not just built a business or a community, she had built a movement, one that would outlive us both, and in doing so, she had shown me what it truly means to leave a lasting impact on the world. Years passed, and Linda's influence continued to spread in ways I had never anticipated. Her restaurant chain became more than just a place to eat. It became a symbol of opportunity and transformation. The program she had started for young people, the training and mentorship, continued to thrive under the leadership of the woman who had taken over. Her business became a model for others who wanted to make a difference. And Linda's name was now synonymous with the very change she had always hoped to inspire. But as much as I watched her work from afar, I found myself looking back at our shared journey often. Linda had taught me not only how to recognize the needs of others, but also how to act on those realizations. She had shown me that privilege wasn't something to be hidden away in shame, it was something to be used. A tool for building a more just world. A few years ago, I attended a conference on social entrepreneurship. It was the kind of event where you're expected to network, rub elbows with other successful people, and share ideas. But that night, instead of spending time with my fellow billionaires and CEOs, I found myself speaking with a young woman who had attended one of Linda's programs. She was just starting her own small business. Inspired by the work Linda had done, I wasn't supposed to get this far, the woman told me, her eyes shining with a quiet strength. I come from a place where people like me aren't supposed to succeed. But Linda changed that for me. She gave me a chance when no one else would. Hearing those words hit me harder than I expected. I had always known the impact Linda's programs had, but hearing it from someone who had lived through it, who had been on the receiving end of her generosity, felt like a full circle moment. It reminded me that this work, this movement was far from over. It was still growing, evolving, and it was only just beginning to make the kind of difference that would change lives for generations to come. And so I continued to support the work Linda had started, not in the same way I had once done, as a benefactor, but as a collaborator. We both knew that what Linda had created was bigger than any one person or any one organization. It was a collective effort, a community of people who were all working together to build a better world. And I was honored to be a part of it, even in a small way. One afternoon, a few years after Linda had officially retired from her business, I received a call from her. She had been traveling, spending time with family, and working on a few new projects. But she hadn't forgotten about me. "I've been thinking," she began, her voice carrying a note of excitement. I always dreamed of doing more for the people who need it. I think I'm ready for the next step." I couldn't help but smile. Linda never stopped dreaming, never stopped reaching for the next goal. It was one of the things I admired most about her. "What do you mean?" I asked, already knowing that whatever it was, it would be big. "I want to expand the programs not just locally, but nationally. I want to create an educational platform, a resource that can help people, especially people from marginalized communities, learn new skills, get jobs, and break the cycles that have held them down for so long. It's going to take a lot of work, but I know we can do it." Her words ignited something in me. I had witnessed the impact she had already made, and the idea of expanding it even further, making it accessible to even more people, was thrilling. It wasn't just about giving people jobs anymore. It was about changing the entire system, the system that had always made it harder for some to succeed. "I'm in," I said without hesitation. "What do you need me to do?" Linda's laugh was full of warmth. "I knew I could count on you. I've got a plan, and I want you to be a part of it. You've seen the change we've made. But we're not done yet, not by a long shot." As we began working on her new project, I found myself rediscovering the passion I had felt when I first met Linda, her belief in the power of community, in the strength of individuals who had been overlooked and underestimated. It was infectious. She had spent years helping others realize their potential, and now she was helping them do more than survive. She was helping them thrive. I could never repay Linda for what she had done for me. The lessons she had taught me about seeing people, about using my privilege for good, about the power of compassion, those lessons had become a part of who I was. But I could support her. I could be there for her as she continued her journey, as she took this new step into uncharted territory. Linda's dream didn't just change my life, it had changed the lives of countless others. And as we moved forward with her new project, I saw the same spark in her eyes that I had seen all those years ago when she first stepped into my life. She had always known what was possible. She had always believed in people, even when the world had told her not to, and now she was ready to give even more people the chance to believe in themselves. Linda had created something powerful, a movement that would live on long after we were both gone. And in that moment, I knew I would continue to be there, not just as a supporter, but as a witness to the incredible impact of her work. Because what Linda had built wasn't just about food or business, it was about hope. And that kind of hope never fades, it only grows. The new project Linda had dreamed up came together faster than I had expected, a true testament to her relentless drive and vision. Together, we built an educational platform that aimed to equip people with marketable skills, things like culinary arts, technology, construction, and business management. But more importantly, we focused on teaching people how to believe in themselves, how to navigate the systems that often kept them trapped, and how to advocate for their own worth. We called it Roots to Rise, a name Linda had chosen, symbolizing how people could grow from their roots, no matter where they started, and rise above the challenges they faced. The idea wasn't just to offer classes, but to create a network of support mentorship programs, job placement, community collaboration, and resources that would follow participants long after they completed their training. The response was overwhelming. People from across the country began reaching out, eager to join, to take part in something that felt like a lifeline. We launched pilot programs in several cities, starting small and making sure that the foundation we built was solid. Linda's restaurant network played a pivotal role in these efforts. Many of her staff, the ones who had grown alongside her in the original restaurant, became mentors in the program. They were proof that people could rise up from difficult circumstances, and their stories resonated deeply with those who joined. But the real change came when we began to hear the stories of the people who enrolled in Roots to Rise. There was Shauna, a young woman from a neighborhood where most people ended up in jail or stuck in dead-end jobs. She'd always wanted to become a chef, but didn't have the resources or the support to make it happen. When she joined the culinary program, she was unsure, almost ashamed of her past. But with the mentorship and training she received, she slowly began to find the confidence to pursue her dreams. She landed an internship at one of Linda's restaurants and eventually became a head chef at a location of her own. Then there was Marcus, a man who had spent most of his adult life in and out of prison. He had been told so many times that he wouldn't amount to anything, that his past would always define him. But he found Roots to Rise and decided to give it one more shot. Through the program, he gained skills in carpentry and construction, found steady work, and started his own small business. He became an advocate for other formerly incarcerated individuals, speaking to others about the power of second chances. Each story felt like a ripple in a much larger movement. These weren't just individual successes, they were proof of what was possible when people had the opportunity, the resources, and the belief in their own potential. And every time I heard one of those stories, I thought back to the day I first hired Linda, when I had no idea what impact she would have on my life. But it wasn't just the people in the programs who were changing. The businesses and organizations that partnered with us to offer jobs were evolving too. They began to see what Linda had always known, that people from marginalized communities brought not only raw talent, but incredible perseverance, innovation, and resilience. Slowly but surely, companies were opening their eyes, realizing that diversity in the workplace wasn't just a box to check. It was a strength, a competitive edge. As the years went on, Roots to Rise became a well-known name. We expanded our reach, offering scholarships and creating more opportunities for people to receive the support they needed. We worked with schools to integrate these programs into curriculums, teaching kids from an early age that no matter their background, they could achieve something meaningful. Linda and I traveled to communities across the country, meeting people who were eager for a chance to change their lives. It wasn't always easy. The work was hard, and at times, the systems felt too big to break. But every time we saw the spark of potential in someone's eyes, we knew it was worth it. Eventually, I found myself looking back at how all of this began with a simple decision to hire a woman who, at the time, I had viewed as just another employee. Linda had made me realize that we can't just sit back and watch the world unfold. We have to be a part of that unfolding. We have to see the people around us, all of them, as valuable and capable of greatness. One evening, after a long day of meetings, I found myself in the same restaurant Linda had started it all at. the one that had grown into a staple in the community. I was sitting at a table near the window, looking out at the sunset. The place was buzzing with life, filled with people of all ages, races and backgrounds. It was vibrant, full of laughter, conversation, and shared meals. Linda came over to check on me, her familiar warm smile lighting up her face. After all the years of hard work, the stress, the victories, the setbacks, she was still the same woman, strong, calm and centered. Looking out at all this, I said, gesturing to the room, "It's hard to believe how far we've come." She nodded, sitting down across from me. "We've come a long way, but it's not about how far we've come. It's about how far we can take others." I smiled, feeling that familiar weight of truth in her words. She was right. It was never about us. It was always about what we could do for others, how we could help them rise up. That was the true measure of success. Linda looked out at the restaurant, her eyes softening as she watched the people she had helped. "This isn't just a place," she said. "It's a family now. And I think maybe that's what we've been building all along, a family, a community that lifts each other up." "I couldn't have said it better myself," I replied, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. We sat there in silence for a moment, both taking in the warmth of the space we had created together, the lives we had touched. In that moment, I realized something else. Linda had not only changed my life, she had changed the world around her. And now, the work was in the hands of so many others who would carry that light forward. The legacy we had built together was no longer just about us. It was about everyone we had helped along the way, and everyone we would help in the future. And I knew, with every fiber of my being, that the ripples of that change would keep spreading for generations to come.